Hello everybody, it's Chloe Fistel here, and today I'm going to be doing recommendations for round 3 of the Black SFFathon. So setup is a little different today. I have a script on my laptop that I'm going to be referencing and reading from, and so that's why the laptop is here. I'm probably going to split this video into 3 parts, one for each of the prompts, just to make things simple for me to edit and upload. So as you may remember from the announcement video, there are going to be 3 Black SFFathon prompts. First one is Genre Blender, a book that blurs genre boundaries. Prompt 2 is an author that you've never read before. And then prompt 3 is a book that features rocks or gems. So for each of those prompts, I'm going to give recommendations of novels. And then I'm also going to do recommendations of short stories from the free short story list. In a previous video, commenter Guy Africa had requested specifically some LGBTQ plus books to be recommended, so I will make a point of mentioning those as they come up in the video. So on to the recommendations. So for the first prompt, Genre Blender, I would recommend a short story collection, How to Dispatch a Human, Stories and Suggestions by Stephanie Andrea Allen. This one is general speculative fiction about Black lesbians in a variety of supernatural, otherworldly situations. There is a future where an older Black woman is pregnant and navigating a hostile smart home who is supposed to be her caretaker. There is one where a woman is like a gig worker working with like these rental scooters, and the scooters gain sentience. There are aliens, vampires, the works. It's a little difficult for me to explain because I think the stories individually can fit kind of neatly into one genre or another, but as a whole, the collection felt very horror to me. I would say this is like a blend of sci-fi and horror, I feel like is my general takeaway from this anthology. It was kind of like if you read that book as a child. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but there were books as kids, of children in a variety of situations, like disobeying their parents, breaking property laws, etc., etc. And as a result, horrific things happening to them, facing off against monsters or ghosts. I think it was like scary stories not to read before bed or something like that. And I felt like the general feel of this collection was very similar to that, but like for adults, if that makes any sense. I don't think there's necessarily like cautionary tales or morals to take away from each story, but there definitely was a focus on gore. And the women are often dealing with these like powerful beings who are kind of beyond their comprehension. I would also recommend The Prey of Gods by Nikki Drayden. This is an adult sci-fi / fantasy. So The Prey of Gods is about a future South Africa where people start to develop these like random abilities, and they find out it's because they are descended from different gods. At the same time that these abilities awaken, this like primordial demon who feasts on humans also awakens and decides that she wants the power of godhood, and so she starts to try and like amass a following. It's about the clash between these two forces that eventually happens. Drayden is a very imaginative author. She also brings a sense of humor to most things that she writes, and this is one of my favorite novels that she's written. I love books with an original pantheon and each god that people are descended from having like a different animal symbol. I also really liked this play between like these primordial supernatural divine forces and also like this modern tech that's kind of a plot line as well, like these robots gaining sentience and personhood as well, and like how do they fit into this whole struggle. My final recommendation would be Fledgling by Octavia Butler. This, I would say, is a horror sci-fi blend. It's about a young Black vampire who was genetically engineered in a lab by her vampire kin. Basically, white vampires can't go out in the day, and so she was engineered specifically because her skin is going to protect her from the sun, and so she would be more mobile, and she would be like a huge asset to the vampires who created her. And one day she just like wakes up severely injured, no idea what happened to her, and her family is dead. It's about her trying to figure out what happened with her family and bring justice to the case. I would say that this book is very difficult to read. Like, the horror elements in this book come from the main character being someone who is older. Like, I forget how old she's in vampires. She's probably about 30 if I remember right. But just due to how vampires age, she has the body of like a 12-year-old human. So she has this very adult mind and sexual desires in a child's body. And so I would say, like, there are scenes of her having sex with adult humans. And it is, like, very squicky and difficult to read. I would not recommend this being your first book by Octavia Butler. But if you've read Butler's other works and you're looking for something else to read by her, I think this would be a good chance to do so. And the reason why I don't recommend it being your first Butler book is because, like I said, it's, like, very difficult to read. Like, I remember I read it shortly after the R. Kelly trials were happening, and it was just, like, very, very difficult in that context to read this book. The only reason I really got through it was because at that point in time, I had read pretty much everything else by Octavia Butler, and just in general, I think her work explores a lot of non-consensual relationships on, like, what does consent look like? How do people navigate power imbalances in relationships? And so at that point, I just kind of had a trust that I was being shown and told these disquieting things for a reason. So, like, I wouldn't necessarily, like, blanket recommend it to people because, like, it's a pretty big content warning. But I think in the right circumstances, it can be, like, a very good read. Like, it really explores race relations, consent, because also the main character as a vampire kind of has mind control abilities and has some biochemical sway over the people that she feeds on. So there's the question of, okay, she's feeding on these people and they say that they love her and they want a relationship with her, but, like, how much of that do they really have control over? And, like, how is she willing to use her powers to get what she wants? Also, I believe that Octavia E. Butler's Slow Read is going to be discussing this book soon. That's hosted by Tati of Musical Tati and in Jerry of Onyx Pages. In terms of the short stories, I would say On the Banks of the River Lex by N.K. Jemisin. So On the Banks of the River Lex was published in Clark's World. Clark's World has print versions of the stories as well as audio versions, so there should be an audio version of this story as well. This is a sci-fi fantasy blend. It's about a post-human future. All the humans have died off due to, I think it was climate change. It's about what happens to, like, deities or characters from folklores when humans who revered them, who told their stories, no longer exist. And in particular, the main character is Death, who's actually making out pretty okay in this apocalypse, relatively speaking. And it's about his relationship with the other people who are trying to make their way in this new world, and what would intelligent life on Earth look like if humans were all dead. I love N.K. Jemisin. This one features an octopus, and I think octopi are really cool, so partial to this story. I'm going to include the link to the short story list in the description box below. The next short story I would recommend is Giant Steps by Russell Nichols. Giant Steps was published in Lightspeed magazine, but I first read it in the Year's Best African Speculative Fiction Anthology 2021, edited by Okenechowe Donald Ekpeki. And this one follows a female astronaut. There are stories that there are, like, giant footprints on Saturn, and she's a woman of logic and reason. She's determined to prove that these stories are false. There are no giants on Saturn. And so she's going into space. It's all well and good, except she has a long-term partner. I don't think they're married. And they have a child. It reminded me a lot of Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison and how it, like, looks at cycles of parenting and abandonment. I would say that it's a science fiction fantasy blend. I had a lot of feelings reading this. I was so frustrated with the protagonist's decisions, but I also understand where the protagonist is coming from. And when she finds, you know, the truth about what's going on at Saturn, it kind of just, like, magnifies the whole situation. And then my last short story recommendation for genre blender would be Seed Vault by Marika Bailey. Seed Vault was published in Strange Horizons magazine. So Seed Vault is about a woman who can see the gods. This is a sci-fi fantasy blend, and it's about basically, from what I can tell, on Earth, a bunch of politicians were pretty much like sick of homelessness, sick of poverty, and so they decided to like ship a bunch of people to terraform this new planet Tyre. And once they send the people, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Like, they don't really check up on them ever again. They don't continue to send supplies, and so the people are basically abandoned. And it's about the society that forms in the aftermath of this abandonment. And specifically, the main character, who starts off the first chapter, she's looking to dig graves. I just, in general, love stories that feature the gods and people's relationship with their gods. And the gods in the story are very personal. Like, they talk to the protagonists a lot. The story isn't quite linear how it's told, and so I like reading things where I kind of have to piece together, okay, like, what happened when, and like, so how that affects like what's actually happening now in the story. So those were all the recommendations for genre blenders. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'm going to have up the recommendation video for author you've never read before shortly. Take care and have a good day. Goodbye.